is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I am John Kurtz. It is a two-man show today, 2Ma today. John and Cole with you. Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. No DUI, but let me give you a little grab bag. We'll talk a lot of football, catch you up on football news and some early lines that are out for K-State games coming up this fall. A lot of confidence, I would say, so far in the Cats, outside of one game perhaps, and some big news with the Arizona kickoff being announced on Friday night, and it will be nationally televised to Fox, so that has gotten the Cats some pub. We'll also run through a little bit of basketball portal news, who K-State is waiting on here with 2 spots left, and the NBA draft withdrawal deadline coming up tonight as we record this here on Wednesday morning. Our show is always brought to you by our friends at Holiday Distillery. Make sure you raise your glass of 360 vodka or Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon to support them. We know we've got a lot of bourbon drinkers out there. You guys, telling you need to try the Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. So many people have told us how incredible it is. Get stocked up for the lake this summer if you're going to be headed out to the lake house. Still no word on whether or not I will be invited out to Cole's Lake House while he drinks Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon, but we'll see. Cross your fingers for me. I'm sure a lot of you will be out there, so make sure you support our friends at Holiday Distillery. Great K-State folks who support us here on the pod. Cole, I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, so I imagine you've probably been spending plenty of time at the lake with your Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon.
Truthfully, took a bottle of Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon to the lake this last weekend where we spent the holiday weekend, and that is what everybody out of my a couple friends did make it down. So, John, sorry you weren't in this club, but I texted you last night about potential weekends. And so I had Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. That's what my buddies were drinking as well. So one of my buddies had never had it before. Really enjoyed it too. So that and he's a bourbon drinker. So yeah, shout out to Holiday Distillery for the great Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. I've got my basement bar stocked with it, and yeah, we'll get you out to the lake soon.
All right, hopefully it will be time for a celebratory toast of that in the portal pretty soon. K-State has a couple of spots left. I did enjoy getting a chance to listen to Jerome Tang and Dream Dowling talk a little bit at the KC Catbackers event last week, which shout out to KC Catbackers, did a great job with that, about some of the guys that they have already. But I think everybody is kind of waiting here anxiously for the final 2 spots, not just because they're 2 spots, but they're still involved with some pretty high-level targets here, but some of this is going to depend on who stays in the draft and who doesn't, and then how do the dominoes fall after that. So, Cole, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are really 4 guys still on the table that we know of, at least right now. One of the guys that they were pursuing, Miles Kelly, has since committed to Auburn, Georgia Tech transfer there, who would be off the board. But Ugana Onyenso, a Kentucky transfer, a big North Carolina, K-State, Louisville seem to be the big 3 players there. You got Coleman Hawkins from Illinois, who was playing for Brad Underwood, another really big name. He's somebody that is projected right now, like in the 50s in the draft, so like could go and be a second-round draft pick. He's one that I would seriously question whether he does actually opt to come back to college or not. There's also Jameer Watkins, a wing from Florida State, and then, of course, Arthur Kaluma, who played for the Cats last year. Everybody knows the situation with Kaluma there. He still has not made a decision on whether or not to pull out or come back to school. And then, once that happened, he did technically hit the portal, so he could go elsewhere too. So there's a lot up in the air here for these final 2 spots. The good news is you can be a little bit choosier here because you've locked down a lot of what you need, but I think we both feel like you really, to feel good about the roster next year, need to get one more pretty big-time guy out of this last group. So how are you feeling about the odds of that happening now?
I mean, it's a great question because, look, you've got 2 different things you're going here against. You've got to hope that these guys all withdraw from the NBA draft, and that deadline is midnight tonight as we record on Wednesday, and then DY and I will talk about it more probably on a show on Thursday of guys that did officially withdraw. Ani Enzo has been vocal that, when he entered the NBA draft and left college at Kentucky this last year, that he was wanting to be done with college basketball. Now, he's not projected to get drafted on any of the boards, and the assumption is he will be back and will pull out of the NBA draft. Coleman Hawkins has insisted that, he kind of wants to be done with college basketball as well. But again, if you're a late second-round pick, especially in a weekend draft, you're likely not going to be getting any sort of a guaranteed contract and very well likely end up in the G League making less money than you would through an NIL deal, probably significantly less money from an NIL deal. I think with Coleman Hawkins, if he chooses to return to college, it's probably going to come down ultimately to K-State and Arkansas. Arkansas has been rumored. I was looking at Arkansas's roster. They have a really good team, but they only have 8 guys currently, from what I can tell, on their roster. So they have a lot of space to work with Calipari and the deals that they got on NIL front to lure Calipari to go there. I assume they have a pretty big budget to still spend. Now, I know, again, they've landed some big-time pieces already, but I think they'll spend big if they need to get a guy like Coleman Hawkins. So we'll see if K-State could potentially secure him, the Illinois power forward transfer that's really a swing guy that can play the 4 or the 5 and stretch the floor. I think you're thrilled if you can get either Anienzo or Coleman Hawkins. Anienzo is more of your traditional 5 center, one of the best shot blockers in the country, and I think he has a lot of upside still. Was a top 30 recruit coming out of high school. And then Jameer Watkins is that wing type that you would love to land. Florida State transfer, as you mentioned, John, over 15 points per game this last year with the Seminoles, and going through the NBA draft process as well. I have not seen him consistently mocked in the drafts. However, I would be surprised if he doesn't pull out of the NBA draft. His recruitment has been pretty quiet. To be candid, I don't know who, his top 3 or 4 schools would potentially be. And I think that's one that K-State maybe just recently in the last couple of weeks has probably gotten more heavily involved in. But we'll see where that one goes. They need a wing and they need a big still. I think their ideal is they land a wing and then they get a traditional 5 like Anienzo, and then David Gasson is kind of your 6th man coming off the bench. Or you get a Coleman Hawkins and still land a wing and you play maybe a little smaller. Now Hawkins is 6'10", almost 6'11", but what would be fun to me is a 5-out offense with a Chore at the 4 or Coleman Hawkins at the 4 and a Chore at the 5. Those two both can stretch the floor. They can shoot it from 3. Hawkins was 37% this last year. It would really space the floor if you went that route, or you go traditional big and Anienzo. I don't think there's not any way they could get Hawkins and Anienzo together. So it's going to be one or the other if both return to college there and they have the fortune to land one of them.
So how would you power rank? What is your wish list here?
I mean, my dream would be Jameer Watkins at the wing and Coleman Hawkins, to be honest with you. And that just goes more with talking. Yeah. And the reason being
I thought I was expecting Anienzo. To me, it's Watkins and Anienzo. That would be my ideal scenario.
And see, I thought you would go with Hawkins as well, because I thought your ideal, you love guys that are going to space the floor and shoot it, and you love shooters, and I thought you would love a lineup of 2 bigs that can both shoot it, and Hawkins and a Chore. Now, you don't have that true 5 shot blocker. Again, they went to the Elite 8 with David Gasson playing the 5, and he wasn't a big shot blocker. I thought you would want guys that could space it out.
Well, here's the problem. They've locked down shooting. Literally every spot on the roster is better at shooting than they were last year. And I got my heart set on Cliff as the traditional big. So it's now I'm seeing hey, I can have that and the shooting. Cliff did some things to me. Now, Caleb Battle absolutely did some things to me, and hopefully, Jameer Watkins can play a role in healing that hole in my heart. So it's, the big hole is not as big, but I would still kind of prefer that here in this scenario. But you're right. There would be Coleman Hawkins is definitely more of a John Kurtz type of player, and that would give you so much flexibility. Either one would be a dream. We're very, very much nitpicking here. Either one of those would be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, Anienzo, changed the way that you're able to defend. Because he's obviously going to be able to sit there in the paint and he's going to be able to protect the rim. Now, again, he moves well enough and fluidly that he can go out and switch, and he can guard as well in switch situations. So he's not just going to anchor down in the paint. And I think he's got some offensive upside, to be honest. Like, I think he's got some parts to his game that maybe weren't utilized at Kentucky just because he was playing the role that Calipari wanted him to. But I think there's some untapped potential there. I think it was Jonathan Givoni's NBA draft, the mock draft or top 100 rankings. Just like a month ago, he had him as like the number 46 player going into the draft. Now, he didn't get invited to the NBA Combine, just the G League workouts, didn't advance to the Combine from that. But I think there's a ton of potential with him. And UNC obviously being a big threat. And then DY, I think, mentioned on Tuesday that Louisville is trying to get into the mix there as well. So we'll see. There's often other influencers that are driving the decision in these things. So I'm not sure necessarily where K-State stands. I feel very confident that K-State is in the top 3 for Anienzo. And I think they're in the top 2 or 3 for Coleman Hawkins as well, should he return to college. But yeah, I mean, my preference is a slight lean to Hawkins with Jameer Watkins. But if it's Anienzo, I'll be thrilled as well.
How are you feeling about Arthur Kaluma at this point in time?
I mean, I think, what was it?
And I guess that's a two-pronged question. One is like, how likely would it be that all comes together? And then two, how high on that all coming together would you be? I mean, they may get into a position where it's like they need a wing. And I mean, he's somebody he was there. Obviously, there's a lot of familiarity within the program because he was there last year. And, you know, I think the sell on him would be that there's going to be way more help around him this year. So there would be less on his plates. And perhaps that really helps out.
Yeah, I mean, I have Watkins ahead of Kaluma. But, you know, Arthur Kaluma did average almost 15 points per game and over 6 rebounds per game, actually 7 rebounds per game last year, and went through the Big 12 grind of a schedule and put up numbers. I think my preference would be a lean toward Watkins, but I would take Kaluma if you're able to get a guy like Anienzo, right? So if you land Anienzo or a Coleman Hawkins, I think Arthur, and then you land Arthur Kaluma and get him back, then I think that's one heck of a successful offseason through the portal, especially where things stood maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. But I don't know, like Kaluma's situation has been so up and down. I mean, that's a guy that hasn't even announced that he's returning to college yet. We know he all likelihood will, but he's bumping up against the deadline as well here. So I don't know, like we thought, I think probably like 3 weeks ago, I would have told you 90% chance Arthur Kaluma is back at K-State. And now I'd probably put it closer to a coin flip. And I think that's probably more of a decision by the coaching staff versus, you know, Arthur Kaluma necessarily. So we'll see. I'm not sure what's going on in the coaches' heads right now and everything. They got a plan in place and a strategy. And I think they're chasing some other guys as well at the same time. And I think Kaluma is a pretty good fallback option if that's the way. That's me framing it that way. I don't know if the staff is framing it that way in their head.
Yeah, just a lot of dominoes to fall. I guess that illustrates the point. There are a lot of dominoes that could fall in different ways here, even though there are only 2 spots left and we are running out of time. So, hey, good time to get over to patreon.com/3maw and keep up to date in the Discord with everything that is going on. And if anything breaks, we'll get you some extra audio there as well. Patreon.com/3maw to get the inside info and support the channel there. Please go support our friends at Home Field Apparel. I've got my nice K-State like baseball kind of ringer tee going on here that I really, really enjoy. I've been wearing that a lot lately. Feel like very summer vibes there. But Home Field Apparel can hook you up with any kind of K-State design that you want, specifically the retro designs, which are unbelievably popular right now. All the kids are wearing them. All the adults are wearing them. I mean, shoot, I shouldn't say that like Twitter is a bunch of kids. If you go look at Twitter, everybody's rocking Home Field Apparel, whether it's K-State, whether it's other schools. You can get 50-plus K-State designs. You can also get 100-plus other schools if you want to be like Derek and cheat on the Cats. You are certainly welcome to do that, and no better place to do it than homefieldapparel.com. Promo code 3MAW23 for 15% off your first order. Again, that's promo code 3MAW23 for 15% off your first order. We're even getting you a discount, people. Go to homefieldapparel.com. We're back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
At some point, I'm going to get that shooting shirt, one way or the other. I'm going to get that home field shooting shirt.
I'm rocking the cat script. Yeah, I'm rocking the cat script. Basketball, very timely for the basketball conversation from home field here. If you're watching on YouTube, rocking that. So, yeah, we'll home field will get us hooked up with the shooting shirt so John can rock that in Bramlage next season.
Please, just, I need the shooting shirt just to prove to Cole that you can look good as a mid-30s male. Well, in Cole's case, late 30s male wearing a shooting shirt.
I'm trying on the math. What's my age here? 37. Okay. Yeah.
Got him.
All right.
Got him.
Yeah.
My birthday's in the summer, so I start to get real a little bit too in my head about my age as we get further along into the summer, Cole. So I had to take you down with me. Look, it's football season, essentially. It's May. We're getting close. Football's next up. We got some news about K-State's game with Arizona. I think we had a pretty good inkling this was going to be the case, but K-State is going to be in the spotlight for a Week 3 game against Arizona. Friday, September 13th. It is a 7 o'clock kickoff at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, and it will be on Fox College Football Friday. So it is the kickoff, the first game of the year for the Fox College Football Friday television package, which is going to be a big deal. You're going to have a ton of people watching that game. It's generated a lot of discussion, and I'm not just talking among K-State fans and Arizona fans and Big 12 fans. Like, people nationally have been taking a look at this like, oh man, that's going to be a really good game to watch. So a lot of implications for this. One being just, hey, huge game for you to win at the beginning of the year, quite obviously, with a team that has college football playoff aspirations, but also like just a chance to make a big statement on a national stage to the nation that you do still matter at a time when opportunities like this are going to be increasingly more valuable, because there is perception starting this year with no Texas and Oklahoma in the league that the Big 12 is lesser than, right? And we have this great divide monetarily between the Power 2 and the other two. This is an opportunity you need to take advantage of. I can remember Cole talking about like last year, K-State fell flat on its face a couple of times when they did have big national audiences. And even when you go back to the Alabama game in the Sugar Bowl, that was, big national audience. Things didn't go very well. Oklahoma State was the one that really bothered me last year when you were playing a weekday game in front of a national audience and you laid probably the biggest egg of the year. I know Oklahoma State wound up making the Big 12 championship game, but it was a pretty bad game. Did not look good, did not look pretty. It was not an impressive showing. So this is one that you really want to grab hold of, and I haven't even touched on the other piece of it, which is like if you want an Avery Johnson Heisman campaign, boy, that is a perfect opportunity to try and jumpstart that.
That Oklahoma State game last year ended up having pretty darn good TV ratings too, right, John? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you were like, oh, great, the one game that they laid an absolute egg on had really good TV ratings on a Friday night. And I think this one will perform very well and probably better than that Oklahoma State game because, first of all, it's a non-con game, but it really is a Big 12 game. It doesn't count in the conference standings, but kind of that inaugural Big 12 kickoff, per se, of two teams that haven't played much in the past, if ever. I don't recall what K-State has played Arizona, but Arizona is going to come in at 2-0. They play New Mexico and Northern Arizona to start the season, and it's a team that will probably be ranked in the top 25 in the country. K-State will be ranked in the top 25, assuming that they win their first two games, with Tulane being a tricky spot the week before on the road and down in New Orleans. But K-State comes in 2-0 and Arizona at 2-0. They're both going to be probably ranked. And then you got the intrigue of offense, right? So offense is sexy. You got Noah Fafita, the Arizona quarterback, who was the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year last year, threw for 2,800 plus yards, I think actually 2,900 yards almost, threw for a completion percentage of 72.4%. It was the best completion percentage in school history. His pass efficiency rating was the second highest in school history. Big time talent in Tataroa McMillan, who's one of the most dynamic receivers in college football, is obviously back for Arizona as well. He's a guy that started as a true freshman at Arizona, had 702 yards, 39 receptions, 8 touchdowns, led all true freshmen. And that was in 2022. In 2023, last season, he had over 1,400 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. He's a 6'5" receiver going into his junior year, highest ranked recruit in Arizona school history, was a 5-star by Rivals, was the number 4 receiver in the country, according to 247 Sports. Big-time talent. Arizona was able to hold on to Fafita and McMillan. So people are going to be intrigued to watch those two go up against Avery Johnson, who, by the way, has the 10th best Heisman odds in all of college football. I was on DraftKings last night checking out these odds. Avery Johnson checks in at tied for number 10 with Riley Leonard of Notre Dame with plus 2,800 Heisman odds. That is the best odds of any Big 12 player to win the Heisman. Avery Johnson, number 10, checking in overall at plus 2,800. The next closest in the Big 12, in the new Big 12, it's Fafita, plus 3,000, just on the heels of Avery, number 13 best Heisman odds. So, yeah, you're talking about probably the two highest ceiling dynamic quarterbacks, and both young. I mean, Fafita is going into his redshirt sophomore year. Avery is going to be a true sophomore. So I think there'll be a lot of hype and buzz going into this game.
And at one point, they were tied. At least one list of Heisman odds I saw had Avery and Fafita tied. So it's either a different list or it's changed just slightly.
Just slightly. Slight change. Yeah.
Okay. So point being, like, that's how this will be billed. It's going to be Avery Johnson v. Noah Fafita, at least as of right now. I mean, we'll see. There will be a couple of games played before that. You're going to Tulane before that, correct?
Yeah.
So, that's a dangerous game that K-State will have to survive. But assuming that you take care of business, that's how that one is really going to get built up. It will be a showcase kind of game, assuming that both teams do take care of business. And look, Arizona's got a lot of questions. Brent Brennan is a new head coach that I think there are a lot of questions about. He was kind of one of those like Rorschach inkblot tests. Depending on how you look at it, you can see two totally different things. The overall record at San Jose State was not something that was eye-popping that you look at and be like, oh, that's a surefire P5 coach candidate. But then others will tell you, like, that's an impossible job to win at, and he did better than basically anybody has in recent memory. Who knows, and they did have some attrition with the coaching change. It wasn't perfect, but they kept the two big ones in McMillan and Fafita. So it's going to be a huge matchup. And to your point about last year's Oklahoma State numbers, 2.3 million saw that game on ESPN. And this is even, we're going to Fox here. So this is network TV, not just ESPN. So that number potentially is going to be even bigger for K-State and Arizona. Plus, it will just be a game that I think more people are excited to see. This is where you can really cash in on the early hype if you want to have a special season. I feel like I talk about this a lot, almost every single year, but just like the fun quotient of the season and leveraging everything that you can on the season and making it as fun as possible. This is one of those opportunities to do so. And I always used it when talking about like the Snyder 2.0. It felt like there were a lot of seasons that were like 7, 8, 9 wins that were kind of like stumble out of the gates, lose big showdown games, and then win games that not as many people are watching, and it just didn't feel as big or as fun. This will be a very important game as far as that is concerned, to just kind of launch the rest of your season. That could be one that does a lot of good for you in terms of just your national profile. And say what you will about how much that matters for the team actually winning games, but we're kind of in a different era. And I hate to view everything through this lens, but you guys know, I do the YouTube channel talking a lot about realignment and the dynamics of college football right now and college sports. It matters more than ever. And unfortunately, you have to kind of view these things through more than just the individual game lens, because you're fighting for notoriety, respectability, and ultimately your seat at the table. Like that type of thing feels like it's on the line all the time for K-State. I hate it because it's much more stressful, but this is one of those opportunities that will be very important to take advantage of.
It's a great opportunity for the brand. And to your point, look, these next 2 years for Kansas State are huge. The next 2 years when you've got Avery Johnson at quarterback and some of the younger talent surrounding him and on the defensive side of the football as well, It's a huge opportunity to farther lift the profile of this football program, real opportunity to win multiple Big 12 championships, potentially get into the college football playoff, obviously, if you do that under the new 12-team format. And look, winning a game like this gives you a little bit of breathing room that, say you don't win the Big 12. Let's say that Kansas State wins this game and Arizona is an 8 or 9 win team and it's a non-con win is what it classifies as. And K-State goes on to go slip up once in Big 12 play and then lose in the Big 12 championship, right? Let's say they lost to a Utah in the Big 12 title game and they're sitting there at 10 and, well, that would put them at 11-2, right? Under that structure scenario, I put them, well, the Big 12 championship winner automatically gets a bye in the 12-team playoff top 4 seed. And then there's a bunch of other at-large spots. Well, you want to be sitting in the best position possible if you don't win that Big 12 championship game, but still have a nice record to have a chance to be an at-large selection, right? And an 11-2 K-State team would potentially have that. So winning a game like Arizona and the non-con, just to give your schedule, your resume a bigger lift, I think would be a nice boost as well and gives you a little breathing room, even though it's not a league game.
Well, Cole, Utah's in the ACC now. I don't know if you paid attention this week, but that's Utah's ACC bound now. Kidding, but they did have to make an official statement about their commitment to the Big 12 because of rumors about them flirting with the ACC. So it's the world that we live in, folks. That's the world that we live in. Well, we got lines on 4 other K-State games from one. There is one major service that has put out lines on 4 K-State games. We'll say that. So we will get to those and where the odds makers are feeling the Cats right now after Cole tells us about our good friends at PXG.
Yeah, PXG had an amazing experience there last week, and as a golfer for years, I've been hearing PXG say nobody makes golf clubs like they do, period. Know what? They're right. I went in for a fitting and saw for myself. It was actually the first club fitting I've ever had in my lifetime, so really was useful and a tremendous experience. Jacob, who was kind of my go-to guy there that helped lead me and analyze my swing and go through it, was tremendous to work with. They couldn't have been more friendly. The experience couldn't have been more first class. I genuinely say that as somebody that had never went through this experience. I didn't know what to expect going in. I walked in, they offered me a water. We went to the back room. They have this TrackMan service and all these computers and electronics that track your swing, analyze the distance that your ball is flying and traveling, the loft, the velocity, the spin rate on your ball, the angle. It shows you as you're hitting, it shows you on the big screen that you're hitting into, if you're slicing, if you're hooking, if you're pulling the ball, if you've got a draw, etc. And they take those and you're just hitting ball after ball with different clubs into that, and they analyze it. And then after every 10 or so swings, adjusted the club facing, adjusted the weighting of the club to match exactly what I needed. And by the end of that 45 minutes, Jacob had adjusted the driver, the PXG Black Ops driver, which is a total game changer. You'll no longer have to sacrifice distance for forgiveness, adjusted that, and I was hitting the ball straight repeatedly, time after time, which is very rare for me to do, and was hitting the ball with a decent distance as well. And so tremendous experience. Also hit some irons. They were so patient with me, hit over 100 balls when I went in there, and was an incredible experience. Tremendous clubs and tremendous customer service. So go check them out. PXG High Performance Equipment. If you think that their high performance equipment is too expensive, their clubs often cost less than the so-called leading brands. PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/3mall to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City over at 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen balls free. That's pxg.com/3mall to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/3mall. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person, and the promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See the store for details. Go check them out. Seriously, folks, they're awesome.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. KCSN.substack.com.
Cole, I have to say the odds makers here don't seem to agree with your take on the K-State Colorado game, because I'm looking at this and the early line on K-State and Boulder is Cats -6, which is fine. I mean, they think K-State's going to win the game. They've got Dylan Edwards wrestled away from Coach Prime, but I believe you predicted what? Let me put it to you this way. What is the Cole Manbeck line? What are the Manbeck computers saying about this? What is Bart Manbeck saying about the game? What is Kelly Manbeck saying about the game? What is Manbeck Palm saying about K-State Colorado right now?
Okay, so I predicted K-State to blow the doors off Colorado by 21 plus in Boulder. Now, if I was actually setting a betting line for the game, I would probably put K-State at, they're 6 right now. I would put K-State at 9.5 on the betting line. If I'm trying to set a reasonable line, the -6 seems way off. I don't agree with that, and I think it'll change as that game gets closer. What I will tell you, John, is now keep in mind, Kelly Ford is still working through the numbers. He's one of the advanced college football analysts that we love to have on the show, and we'll get him on soon as well. But he tweeted on May 23rd, which was last Thursday, that he was still working through the numbers, but, quote, I'm far enough along that it's reasonable to ask the question, will K-State be favored in each of its games in 2024? All right, well, Kelly Ford has the K-State Colorado game as an 88% probability that K-State wins. And typically when he has that high of a probability win factor, the line in his eyes is going to be closer to probably 10. I don't want to speak for Kelly. We'll get him on to analyze it himself. But at his initial look, 88% win probability, which would probably mean I would think K-State in the advanced numbers would probably be like 9.5, closer to 10-point favorite. So, yeah, that betting line is off. If you want to make some easy money, go ahead and lock that in over at DraftKings and get on that -6, because that number is going to be inflated quite a bit higher by the time that game rolls around.
Cole Palm, according to Nick. Cole Palm. I like that. That's pretty good. Cole Palm says K-State -9.5, I suppose. Cole, why don't you can't you just tease that thing up to like K-State minus, I don't know, 25 or something? I mean, put your money where your mouth is.
If you want to really boost it, we'll see if DraftKings will allow you to do it, but maybe you could boost that line to -21. That's the Manbeck special that we'll put out there as the game gets closer. Maybe we can get some sort of promo code. The Manbeck special, boost it to -21, and you get like plus 2,000 odds, right? It's bet 100, win 2,000. And maybe we do that. So we'll look into that as we get a little bit closer. But in all seriousness, I think that line is going to inflate as we get closer to the season, the early weeks of it unfold.
You've got no fear that Colorado is going to pull a little something together. I was listening to Josh Pate the other day, and he said one of the games that could really change perception-wise at the beginning of the year is, so Colorado plays North Dakota State on the first Thursday of the season. So that'll be a game that everybody's watching. And he said, that'll be obviously a popular upset pick. But if Colorado actually comes through, plays well, and wins, then maybe the perception really starts to change on Colorado. Like, hey, Deion's got it figured out. Deion can beat North Dakota State, the program that everybody really fears here and seemingly would take down the flashy, non-substantive team out there.
I mean,
got no fear.
Didn't North Dakota State lose Entz, the coach, to USC to be a position coach too? Like, why does everyone assume that North Dakota State's going to be great? Just because they've been, I guess that's true. That's true. Look, that's a Thursday night game.
Believe so.
All right. No, we'll tune into that and give it a look. So,
okay. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Okay. Well, what would you been at?
I would take K-State -6, but it's a road game. Colorado's been filling that place up more than they used to. It's not fun to be standing on the sideline when people are throwing battery balloons at you. So, I just combine the piss balloons and batteries into one thing. But, who knows what the kids are doing in Boulder these days.
John, there'll be 15,000 K-State fans in Boulder.
Okay. Oklahoma State. K-State is also a 6-point favorite as of right now at home against Oklahoma State. Cats -6. Oklahoma State at home has always gone much, much, much better than Oklahoma State on the road. So like that is one that I can kind of get behind here. But the opinions on Oklahoma State are interesting because I will admit, it does feel like to me we're, as a collective college football group, sleeping on Oklahoma State a bit. I mean, they're returning a ton. I know that Alan Bowman's ceiling is not astronomically high, but I mean, they retained Ollie Gordon and they have a ton of production coming back, and it's Mike Gundy. I mean, the guy suffered through a 4-touchdown loss to South Alabama last year and still made the Big 12 championship game. So that feels a bit unfair to me that we have expectations as middle of the road right now for Oklahoma State as we do. I think their over-under is like 7.5 right now.
Well, you thought, look, all right, so you called out West Virginia when I said a couple weeks ago on the show that I think they could be, I think K-State's second or third toughest game. And you said, well,
West Virginia, I'm not, dude, look, we're talking about Mike Gundy versus Neil Brown in terms of who to trust.
I got you. But you were saying fraudulent 9-win team. And my point is, like, I feel like I'm not going to gain any fans of Oklahoma State, but I don't know. I kind of feel, I don't want to say they were a fraud. Last year they made the Big 12 championship game, but I'm not quite buying it, even with that returning production. And a large part of it is Alan Bowman at quarterback. I mean, who do they have behind Alan Bowman, John? Is it Rangel? Is it Flores, the redshirt freshman who K-State recruited at one point in the same class as Avery Johnson? Alan Bowman is very injury prone throughout his career. I don't think he's anything flashy, man. I know they have Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker Award winner, who's also got Heisman odds that are 27th best in the country at plus 7,500, but I'm not there. Now, they have the third most returning production in all of college football per Bill Connolly's updated post-spring returning production rankings. Guess who's number one, by the way? It's a Big 12 team.
Kansas up there?
Iowa State.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. According to Connolly, Iowa State returns the most production in all of college football at 86% overall. Iowa State in 2021, John, had the fourth most returning production in college football. They went 7-6. So you remember the hype around that team. I'm not sure how much that necessarily means. Oklahoma State is number 3 in the country at 85% overall. They return 90% of their production on offense. That's number 2 in the country, and 80% on defense per Connolly, which is number 10 in the nation. Colorado's got the 18th most returning production. Now, I'm not sure if this calculates all the transfers they lost in the spring window, but probably pretty close. He's got them at 18th overall with 71% overall returning production, with 67% of its offense back, ranking 48th, and 75% of its atrocious defense back at number 18. I'm not sure that's a good thing, given how their defense did play. But anyways, getting back to the point I made about, the 88% win probability by Kelly Ford, and keep in mind, again, he's still finalizing these numbers, but for Colorado was 88%. For Oklahoma State, it's 72% win probability that K-State wins that game, according to Ford. So 16% less. You think the betting line at probably 6 is probably closer to accurate for that one based off those models versus Colorado, which kind of gives you a feel for how that all works and shakes out. So, yeah, I think the 6 is probably right. I might put it at 6.5, closer to 7, but I think that line is pretty close to being accurate for Oklahoma State coming into Manhattan. Now, the last time they came into Manhattan, they got beat, 48-0? So, yeah.
Will Howard is riding off into the sunset on people's shoulders. Yeah, the last time that happened. But I would anticipate that it goes a little bit differently this time around. I want to make a couple of distinctions here. One, I don't know that I called West Virginia frauds or fraudulent. I just think that was a schedule inflated, probably like 7-5 team last year. I think Garrett Green is pretty good, but I don't think he has the upside of the guys like Fafita, Avery Johnson, Jalen Daniels in the conference. So I'm not, look, West Virginia may well surprise me. It's just I don't have enough faith in Neil Brown combined with that looking like a bit of a schedule inflated team last year to feel confident in them getting kind of a different type of schedule this year to reproduce what they did last year or leap higher. That's my opinion as of right now, but I'm not calling them frauds. I don't think that's totally fair. Oklahoma State, I just want to say that, look, Cole said you guys were a little fraudulent last year making the Big 12 championship game. I respect the fact that you pummeled K-State on that was a Friday night, right? Pummeled K-State on on a Friday night, made it look really gross and ugly. I respect the fact that you went to the Big 12 championship game. I respect Mike Gundy's track record. I would never do such a thing as to insinuate that you were in any way a little bit fraudulent. Okay, so let's just clear some things up with Oklahoma State and West Virginia.
Well, okay, fair enough. And fair enough on the Mike Gundy point, who often overachieves and has been one of the best coaches in the Big 12 ever since this league was formed, consistent, successful. I just think they're probably more of an 8-win type team this year. I haven't broken down their schedule yet, but I don't know. I'm just having trouble buying. As I watched them last year, I guess maybe I'm having trouble shaking that game they had against South Alabama on that Saturday night where they played incredibly poor. Look, there are two teams last year in college football that I often wonder that played K-State early in the year where their seasons would have went had K-State pulled the games out. You remember how down in the dumps Oklahoma State was after they lost that South Alabama game? If K-State goes down to Stillwater and beats them, like, I feel like the fans are just pretty checked out on that Cowboy team, and I don't know if they were.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Cole. K-State was not close. They were not close to winning that game. They got their ass kicked. I mean, that was.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just chalked that. I thought K-State played terrible. I don't know if I give Oklahoma State, like, I felt like K-State just beat themselves there and played one of its worst games in the climate era. And then I think about Missouri, right? I mean, you and I were in the parking lot before the Missouri game, and you heard, like, everybody you talked to about Eli Drinkowitz, they were completely checked out on Eli Drinkowitz in that parking lot before the game. They're apathetic, want him out. They win that game in the way that they did, and then their season turns out to be great. Oklahoma State, same thing. Like, if K-State wins both those games, I don't know where either one of those teams' seasons goes with the way the fan base was feeling at that time, but it doesn't matter. They both won. It's an interesting thought to wonder where their seasons head if K-State pulls off both of those wins or even one of those victories. So, yeah, Oklahoma State beat the hell out of K-State. And granted, it ended up being, a one-score game at the end, but it never felt close.
It was not going to. I mean, that's final score, not indicative of how that game actually was and looked.
Though they did have the ball with a chance to tie on Oklahoma State's side of the field at the end of the game. So, I mean,
I'm not gonna give you that one. The Mizzou, I will give you. I'm not gonna give you that one.
Okay.
Iowa State, though. Iowa State's a pick'em. I mean, this is the game where I thought, like, hey, that's interesting. DraftKings, like, Iowa State a pick'em. It's in Ames. Ames is tough. Even K-State's Big 12 championship team playing against 4-win Iowa State team had to rely on a nice drop by Iowa State's number one receiver late in the game to pull that one out of the fire. Survived Malik Knowles bringing me down to my knees with his fumble at the goal line, all of that. So I do not anticipate it being easy. You guys will not be shocked to hear me say this, but I feel like Iowa State is the team out of this whole conversation that may be getting just a tad too much hype for what I think they actually are. And this is, look, you can say it's just the blind Iowa State hatred. To me, it's more of like, what has Matt Campbell generally been? Matt Campbell has generally been a very high floor, medium-ish ceiling guy. And last year, I think, was a perfect encapsulation of how good of a coach he can be. Like, he will take groups with low expectations, a lot of turmoil with everything that was going on with the Gam scandal and losing Deckers at quarterback, and turns it into something pretty darn positive, right? And by the end of the year, they're kicking K-State's ass up and down in the snow. But where he has struggled is, like you said, expectations, having all those guys. Their dudes are littered the NFL right now from that 2021 team that, went 7-6. Like, this is not where Matt Campbell thrives. So I am just not buying that this is going to be like a legitimate Big 12 championship contending Iowa State team. I think they will probably be what they most of the time are. Just two numbers that they know very well, 7 and 5. That's my read on Iowa State right now. Now, I guess my question to you, Cole, would be, if Iowa State is a 7 and 5 Iowa State team, like your quintessential Matt Campbell 7 and 5 team, is it fair to say that would be a pick'em game then still in Ames?
I think so, probably, when you consider the circumstances. Last game of the season, they're, how much they want to beat K-State and their hatred for Kansas State, two schools that don't like each other.
Is Jerome Tang, can Jerome Tang show up on the sideline for that game, or
distract them?
Get him in the stands? Yeah.
I think we'd probably need security for Jerome Tang, the way they seem to act and behave with anything Jerome Tang does, but it would be distracting to them probably if his presence was there. Look, I think also when you factor in, Iowa State traditionally has knocked off a big name team or a highly ranked team at home. It's a tough place to play. There's no denying that. I mean, you think about all the games that have been played there, even some K-State games over the years of some really good teams that had to go in and win a dogfight in Ames. And if you look at the metrics, the pick'em lines up closer to what Kelly Ford says. So Kelly Ford has this game as a 55% win probability for Kansas State to win. That is K-State's lowest win probability out of their entire season. The next closest is West Virginia at 60%. And then every other game, the Wildcats have a win probability north of 70%, according to Ford's early rankings and projections and models. So, it being 55%, that's a pretty darn close to a pick'em based off that model. K-State would probably be -1, -1.5. This is probably going to be one of K-State's hardest games. Now, I think it actually could be their hardest game, actually. Now, the one thing that caveat I'll note is Iowa State, the week prior, November 23rd, they're a 9.5-point underdog in the DraftKings early betting lines at Utah. I think that's significant. They got to go to Utah. They got to play in the altitude the week prior to Kansas State. Utah is usually a physical team. That's going to be a hard game on them. And then they play K-State the following week, another hard game that have to get up for. So that also gives you a sense, though, if you look at some of Utah's betting lines, John, it gives you a sense of how Vegas feels about Utah comparative to K-State. Utah goes to Colorado on November 16th, all right? And the Utes are favored by 8. K-State's favored by 6 at Colorado. So, you kind of get that feel. Arizona goes to Utah on September 28th. Utah is favored by 9.5. K-State is favored by 7.5 at home against Arizona. So it seems like Vegas views Utah as a couple of points better than Kansas State, and the way these lines and early betting lines model out.
Which, fair enough. I know that I don't want to get off on too far of a Utah tangent, but I know that there's some K-State fans that bristle at that, and a lot of Big 12 fans in general have just been rubbed the wrong way by Utah fans, and deservedly so with some of them. But let's look at what Utah's done the last couple of years. I mean, K-State won a Big 12 championship, yes. Utah won the Pac-12 twice. They've been a step above, if we're just being honest, what K-State's program has been. Now, you can say, hey, I believe in Avery Johnson and his upside more than Cam Rising, and transitioning to a new conference, they're a little overconfident. Whatever it is that you want to throw in there, and the reasoning for this year, that's fine. But I'm actually okay with Utah getting a little more benefit of the doubt because of what they've been as a program. If we're just being objective here, it's been a step above what K-State's has been. Doesn't mean that that's how it's going to carry out moving forward. I'm also with you on Pick'em is fine at Iowa State. Yeah, that's going to be a hard as hell game. Iowa State could be a 4-8 team again, and I think that would be a really, really difficult game at the end of the year. I mean, if we're just being objective and honest, we don't like them, and K-State's been the better program here the last few years, but Iowa State kind of has K-State's number. I mean, even that game I mentioned in Ames, it took literally everything K-State had and a drop from Iowa State to pull it out. And other than that, man, I mean, Iowa State's been taking care of business in that series, including last year in a head-scratching game at the end of the year in the snow. So they've earned the right to get a lot of respect in that game and that matchup.
Well, and I mean, I do think it is meaningful that they have so much back. I mean, like I said, they have the most returning production in college football. Okay, last year, the top 4 Power 6 teams in returning production in college football were KU, Missouri, Florida State, and Michigan. Michigan obviously won the national title. Florida State should have gotten in the playoff. Missouri was playing in the Cotton Bowl, I believe. They won 10-plus games. KU had a nice season. Okay, those teams, those 4, which were the top 4 in returning production at the Power 6 level going into last season, The year prior, in 2022, they went a combined record of 35-18. Last year, they went 48-7. All right, so having all that production back, it matters. If you look at 2022, TCU returned the second most production among Power 5 teams at 82%. They went to the national championship. They were a surprise team. KU returned the third most production in 2022 among Power 5 teams, and they at 82%, and they had a nice year. Now, there are also outliers. It's not an automatic given. In 2021, as I mentioned, Iowa State, fourth most production in college football, finished 7-6. UCLA and Miami were number 2 and number 3 in the country, and they went 8-4 and 7-5, respectively. So it's not a given that it's going to equate to really successful seasons. But yeah, that's just kind of a breakdown of the production that is returning. You mentioned, John, KU. One of the things that surprised me, out of the 16 Big 12 teams, KU returns the least production, according to Connolly, at 59% overall, 62% on offense, number 64 in the country, 56% of its defense, number 90 in the country. Now, the offensive equation you can also figure out because Jason Bean is gone and Jalen Daniels missed so much time last year that they feel like the numbers will show they lost more on offense because Daniels didn't play as much, but they know they're getting their quarterback back that they love. K-State is number 64 in the country in returning production at 63% overall, 47% of the offense, number 107 in the country. Again, Avery Johnson versus Will Howard. Will Howard got the majority of the snaps, but the buzz and excitement is obviously surrounding Avery Johnson. K-State also 79% of its defense back, number 12 in the country. So according to Bill Connolly.
Yeah, it was a bad miss by me. I remember as soon as Kansas came out of my mouth and he asked me who was number 1 in returning production, I was like, oh yeah, I actually just saw Kansas right next to K-State in terms of returning production, with both of those numbers being fairly low. And last year was stuck in my head. Obviously, they had so much coming back last year. And a good point on both quarterbacks, good point on both situations. K-State, by the way, 7-point favorite early in Manhattan, according to this early line from DraftKings.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I'll say about KU, like, you think they have a ton back because they have a ton back at the sexy positions, right? I mean, they're wide receivers who were really good and running back. Yeah, really good. I mean, they have a ton of talent coming back at both position groups. They did lose a lot on defense. Booker in the NFL now. There's other guys that are gone that I'm not going to try and name them all. And then offensive line. Cooney in the NFL. They lost 2 or 3 starters up front.
Hang on, real quick. Who's the guy that dropped the pick 6 last year? Is he back?
That would be Miller, right? I think he was a senior. Nick can correct us if I'm wrong.
He's not back. Okay, he's gone. Yeah. Damn. Well, all right. Still need to send him a fruit basket.
Rich Miller. Yeah, Rich Miller. Yeah, because obviously that changes the dynamics of that game dramatically. Look, the 7%, let's see here what Kelly Ford has in his early outlook for win probability for this one. This one surprised me a little bit. K-State, 85% win probability to beat KU, which probably means he's got it again closer to a 10-point spread in the early models versus a 7-point spread in Manhattan. I think a 7-point spread is pretty close to where I would probably have this. I think it'll be a tough game and a good game.
I would not push it much higher. Yeah. I mean, the only way I would, if you're going to say, hey, Jalen Daniels and his health, and I don't think he'll be fully healthy, I mean, that'd be about the only way I could see somebody making the case for pushing it further than that. If both teams are healthy, that should be a real knockdown, drag-out kind of game with K-State having a decent edge because they are at home. That's and just the mental edge of having won for the last decade and a half plus.
Yeah, I mean, in a fun game. I mean, October 26th in Manhattan, not late in the year. It's going to be probably nice fall weather. The game right before Halloween, too, adding even a little bit more buzz. I mean, the atmosphere could be electric going into that one. So cannot wait for it to get here. And yeah, it's fun to be talking football and breaking down these schedules. And we'll have a ton more this summer, as we head into the season, giving you, game by game breakdowns, detailed analytics of everything. We'll get Kelly Ford on. We'll get some of these other guys on that can break things down for us and give them their thoughts and perspectives. And we'll get DY to give his thoughts. I'm sure he would mock some of my projections.
Hopefully the Kansas game is not 35 degrees and raining this time around like it was last time it was in Manhattan. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I don't think if we have to worry about that on October 26th, then something has gone drastically wrong with the weather. So
yeah,
hopefully we don't have to worry about that. And I mean, that could be a, game that's one of the national profile games that we got. I haven't looked at what KU's schedule looks like going into that game, but they've got Lindenwood? Their
Lindenwood.
First game. Yeah. Then Illinois, then UNLV at home, at West Virginia, home to TCU. So that at West Virginia game is going to be hard. At Arizona State, Houston. I think KU will beat TCU, win at Arizona State, beat Houston. I could see them at worst coming into Manhattan at 6-1. Just right.
I'm going to say they'll be 6-1 or 7-0 through that. I would be pretty confident in saying that. Yeah. Yep. Well, again, if Jalen Daniels is staying healthy, that would be the caveat there. All right. It's going to wrap it up for us. Fun to talk some football with you today. Patreon.com/3maw if you want more. If you want to hang out with us on a daily basis in the Discord, basically giant K-State group text. It is a blast, a lot of fun, and this is a good week to do it with the draft deadline being tonight. Sure, we'll have a little bit of action there in the transfer portal for hoops, so you can stay up to date with that. Patreon.com/3maw to get signed up to be a part of that. We appreciate the work of Nick Springer behind the scenes. Thanks to our friends at Holiday Distillery, at PXG, at Home Field Apparel. For Cole Manbeck, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3 Maw.